Hello and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another, got to get it out, potluck wrap up where I pull titles that I have read over the last few months out of this teapot and then wrap them up for you because I read a lot, although ironically I only read 4 books in Feb. It does mean I might actually be able to wrap up more books previously that have sat in this pot for nearly a year. Don't like that. But anyway, as you know, I have a 20-minute timer which I will press go on and then... That was pathetic, but anyway, let's pull out the first title that I can wrap up for you today. And that is going to be All the Boys Aren't Blue, which is a book I read in Feb. So, All the Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. Now, obviously in February, Bow Ties with Books hosts Blackathon, which is a readathon all about promoting black authors and black characters and just general BIPOC awesomeness. And I decided to do the fantasy prompts, but one of them was trans rep, and I didn't have any fantasy or sci-fi books that fit that prompt, so I read this one instead, and it has a trans character that George knows of or is related to, so I was worried that it might not tick that prompt, but it did. But it had the trans flag on it, obviously colour-wise, so I was pretty sure I was going to be in a safe bet. It's a very short, very cute memoir. It looks at the LGBT community, it looks at the black community, and it looks at Johnson's personal experiences, which I love. If you've met me before, you know that I have written a short memoir or short collection of stories about myself as well, so I do enjoy reading about people. I find people fascinating, and I found this fascinating as well. I gave it 4 stars. There was nothing really that I could have improved upon it, except maybe that there were moments where Johnson would like lean into these moral values that you could take away from his stories, or little lessons that you could learn, and I kind of wanted to see some more of those. I wanted it to kind of have a more even keel balance of that, but also this is very YA, it's very kind of like muted. There are things that happen to him that he kind of discusses, but only vaguely, and I feel like I'd be very, very interested to read more of this, more about him, for an adult audience where it doesn't necessarily look at doing it nicely. I've read some feminism books recently. Hood feminism is a perfect example where they're not trying to placate the audience just by having those subjects in and kind of going, but you should be a better person, shouldn't you? Whereas I felt like this is definitely what this was doing. But it's a really lovely memoir. I can see why people love this so much. I thought it was really beautiful, and obviously it ticked off that Blackathon prompt, so I was very happy. Next I will be wrapping, oh, there's 2 here, so we'll do both of these. I'll put this one down first. First one will be Our Violent Ends. So Our Violent Ends is the second in the duology by Chloe Gong, all about a 1920s Shanghai Romeo and Juliet retelling, and I loved the first one. The first one to me was magical. It was a perfect balance of Shakespeare and urban fantasy, and I really liked the balance of characters. I liked the kind of spin on the characters. I liked that Juliet was no nonsense and Roma was still the romantic that I recognised from the original play, and considering Romeo and Juliet is not my favourite play of all time, I actually loved. I think I ended up giving it 4.5 to 5 stars. It was immaculate. This one was trying too hard. Now, with a tragedy like Romeo and Juliet, you expect the first half to be lightness and fair and beautiful, and the second half to be dark and stormy and angsty. The first half of this book was just kind of more of the same, and I didn't really care, and it was like, oh, you know that monster from book 1? Well, there's 5 of them now, and I was just kind of like, okay, cool. Like, I needed more stakes, I needed more involvement. The writing style is still fucking beautiful, the characters are still really interesting. There were moments where there were genuine stakes and I was worried for characters that I loved very much. It was really interesting to see how Benvolio and Mercutio, their relationship kind of changes because of the things that have happened to them, etc. Finding out more about Mercutio's background, which was very reminiscent of the original play, and I won't spoil it, but there is that element. I really, really liked that. But overall, it was more of a 3.5 to 4 stars, whereas the other one had been much, much higher. I did enjoy it, but there were just moments where it was trying too hard. It suffers from sequelitis, basically. I'd really, really enjoyed the first one, and the second one was just trying too hard to emulate what the first one had captured, and it just needed to chill out a little bit. It was longer, obviously, but I didn't mind that, but it was just didn't hit it. Didn't hit where I needed it to hit. Still really enjoyed it. Love the fact that it's a little duology, and I will probably reread again at some point because it was glorious. And then the other one I picked out by accident is Abandoned by Meg Cabot, or Meg Cabot. Again, Okay, so this one I did as an audiobook on Scribd. Now, I've mentioned it several times, but I am currently trying to reread all of Meg Cabot's work. I loved Meg Cabot's books. They were my entire teenhood, but there are some of them, including this one, that I did not read as a teen. So I was going into this without the nostalgia of really enjoying it and kind of coming to terms with like the fact that this is a book that I loved, whatever. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling that is not good. It's really interesting because there are moments in The Mediator where you can see what she's trying to encapsulate, right? You've got Carmel, you've got the Latinx rep, you've got all these interesting things, and that is all that rides on the coattails of this, or stands on the shoulders of it, because it's so much better than in this. This is not good. I felt like there were moments where it wasn't just rep, but cultural appropriation, which made me feel really ick. The idea of Hades not actually being a Hades, but like one of many, and he was just an asshole. There was nothing redeeming about the love interest whatsoever. And the Persephone character, there was this element of, is it all in her head? Is it like a psychological thing? Did she actually die? Because she doesn't know. She has no other kind of like supernatural abilities. But then these other things happen, and it just felt like a hot mess. And it was almost like the book was trying to fix all of its problems in one go. And considering it's the first in a trilogy, I will not be continuing on this trilogy. As much as I was like, I want to reread every Meg Cabot book, I will not be reading the next two in this. It's just not worth my time. And if I hadn't been doing it as a Scribd audiobook, I probably would have DNF'd straight up. It was only the fact that it was like 4 hours long that I committed to it, because it just wasn't good. Wasn't good. Very, very disappointing. But on the upside, if I was going to have a list of books that I wanted to read, and there has to be like the worst of Meg Cabot, I think I found it. Like, I don't even need to worry ranking wise. That one could just go slap bang at the bottom. Everything from now is up. Next is The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. This is a weird one for me. I really enjoyed this, but I can see what people are saying when they say that it takes too long to get into it. There are two main characters. You have Luca and Touraine. Luca is a wannabe queen. She is a princess regent, something like that, but essentially she has been sent to the colonies to stop a rebellion, and if she can stop this rebellion, then her uncle will have no choice but to relinquish the throne to her. And then you have Touraine, who was basically a slave, who has been kidnapped from her family, trained to be a soldier, and now knows nothing else. But fundamentally is going to become a turncoat. That's on the synopsis. Because it's an adult fantasy rather than a YA fantasy, the pacing is a lot slower than I am used to with high fantasy, and it wasn't that I minded it so much as the reason the pace was slow, or felt slow, is because nothing really happens for the first 100, 200 pages. It's just these two people like hanging out and trying to solve a rebellion in these really wishy-washy ways, and they don't really learn anything by the end, other than they are absolutely, both of them, willing to destroy an empire to be together, which should feel really romantic, except I just didn't believe the chemistry between the two of them at all. Pros, for sure, is that it is based on Egyptian mythology. I found that really, really interesting. I've never read an Egyptian high fantasy like this before. I guess in my mind I was kind of hoping for a Gideon the Ninth style sapphic romance, and that wasn't really what this was, in the fact that you've got these very like elite people. There was a lot to do with like the slavery and the slavery element of it, and there were just things about Touraine, who was the slave's behaviour, that I just found a bit jarring. So she obviously enjoys being part of high society, but then she's arguing with people that her princess is doing good when she can literally see that her friends are still conscripts and are still going out to die, and she wants to do everything she can to protect them, but who does she trust? So there were lots of those elements that I really enjoyed, but were just a bit confusing and a bit kerfuddled. And it's another one where it is part of a series, but the difference is I'm more intrigued by the second book because I want to see where this goes. This book does have a really satisfying ending. There are lots of fight scenes, there's lots of like intrigue, but it is very highly political and very high fantasy. So I would probably recommend this if you enjoy things like The Priory of the Orange Tree, where it's such a dense fantasy you want to just sink into it, because that I did enjoy it. I thought it was good. It just wasn't my favourite, but I don't think that's anything down on the book and more like my taste. I prefer a faster paced fantasy. I prefer a YA high fantasy overall because it does move a lot quicker and there aren't quite so many moral beats This one just took a long time, and the moments where there should have been tension, there just weren't for me. So it is what it is. It's a great book, it just wasn't right for me. Oh, again, we've got another, oh, I've got 2, okay. I thought I pulled out 3 for a second there. Okay, the next one is The Other Black Girl. I read this back in November. This is a thriller contemporary set in kind of New York's publishing world, and it got a lot of hype before it came out. This I did as an audiobook via NetGalley, and when I first listened to it, it was really intriguing to me. It had all the thriller elements that I wanted. It had a really insidious antagonist. Just the plot was really intriguing, the pacing was really good. There are flashbacks to a secondary character which were a bit jarring, but it kind of just all added to this thriller element. But it was one of those books where the more I thought about it and the more I discussed it with other people, the more insidious the book as a whole is, less than the story. So for clarification, in this story you have a young black girl working in publishing. She is the only black girl in her office, which is insidious enough by itself. And then another black girl joins her office. And rather than them working together to kind of negate the constant racism and, what's the word I'm looking for, like microaggressions that the first black girl was exploring, the second one has kind of come in to temper the first black girl's blackness and to make her more suitable to work in an environment surrounded by white people. It kind of, this is spoiler territory, I mean that was spoiler territory, so just a heads up going forwards. The thing, making the main character a black woman and then her one key antagonist, the only other black woman, was incredibly insidious. And not just because it's in the book, but because the readers that I have seen really loving this have been white readers like myself who enjoy a thriller, rather than black readers looking for great rep in a thriller. Now thrillers are going to touch on horrible subjects, right? We've talked before about lampshading, where things are highlighted but not actually done anything about, or not necessarily have any commentary on it that is going to be beneficial long term. This is just one massive lampshade book where it kind of goes, the way people are treated in publishing because of their skin colour is fucking awful, but doesn't it make for an interesting thriller? Like, doesn't it add this level of intrigue and insidiousness that the only person this woman should be able to rely on, she can't, because that woman is working against her. And there were a couple of male characters where it would have been great if they had been the villain, just because they're so absent so much of the time, but they have so much control. That would have been really interesting to me, but instead it's one woman pitted against another, and I just didn't like that. When I read it, I thought it was really interesting and really clever, and then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I'm pretty sure that's just internalized misogyny. I think that my acceptance of that says more about me than it should, and I didn't like that. I don't like the fact that I was like, oh my god, this is a really interesting thriller. It's fucking horrible. Like, it was, yeah, so I am very conflicted about this book. I've unhauled my copy for that reason. I did have a hardback that I bought because my initial reaction was, I really like this, but it's not a book that I will go around recommending. Like, feel free to give it a go, but I've taken it down from Waypoint because I want to find a thriller written by a black author that I'm like, no, it's not just leaning into those tropes because they're insidious and easy to write about and because we just accept them for what they are. I want it to be a good book. And that, I don't know, it gave me the ick. The more I think about it, the more of the ick it gives me. Do you know what I'm saying? And maybe I'm just up on my high horse about it, but I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below, do you think I'm being too harsh, rating it lower because it gave me the ick after the fact? Or do you think I should just be able to enjoy a book and enjoy a book? Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know. Anyway, the other one that I pulled by accident, and my throat is going because I've got a sore throat, but we are powering through. Oh, it's Jane Eyre, which I did not actually get down. But my copy is right here. So, Jane Eyre I am reading, or I read as part of a vlog, but that will only be available on Discord until about December. I might share them in December, we'll see. But for now they are Discord only, so if you want to know my thoughts about Jane Eyre as and when I was reading it, you will have to go and join the Discord and find out. Next. Okay, we have Where the Drowned Girls Go. Now, this is the most recent instalment of the Wayward Children series, and I really enjoyed it. I know a lot of people don't like Cora, and Cora's obviously the main character in this, but if you do like Suki, Suki is also in this as a main character, and I kind of loved that. I loved the intrigue. It's almost like a heist book, but not really. And essentially, Cora, having experienced this really liberal, interesting school that wants you to feel like you can go back to your other world at any point, or that you could, or that you're okay being different. Cora has kind of had enough of that. She feels very claustrophobic in this place, and she wants to be normal again. So it kind of looks at what normal is, what it is like to force yourself into a box of being normal when you're not a normal person, or normal is arbitrary. That was really interesting to me. Now, what also interests me is Cora is a plus size character, so there's great plus size rep in this. I know some people find it too on the nose, but I like it. I like that there is this difference between Cora and the people around her, and that for her size, it used to bother her. There are things about it that bother her, but it is not solely who she is. She is a mermaid, and she's kind of exploring what it means to be this person of like colourful intent whilst also surrounded by people who are trying to dull that and make it more grey. And then to have such an insidious main antagonist was really interesting. The school is obviously not good. It is a representation of things that are incredibly insidious and gross. So I thought that was really clever. And the fact there's still short stories and still so compelling. I finished it in an afternoon and I really enjoyed it. It's not my favourite. I still think Across the Green Green Grass is probably my favourite. It's definitely up there. I thought it was great. I'm trying really hard to power through these because this basket is overfull as it is. Okay, next, Star Wars The Last Jedi Junior. Right, I love Star Wars The Last Jedi. I think it is one of the greatest Star Wars films ever made. It has got to be definitely my top 3, if not my top Star Wars film of all time. And when I was having a little perusal in a charity shop, I saw that they had a Star Wars, the paperback version, for £1. And I was like, yes, gonna do that, gonna read it, love that. Got home, started reading it, and was like, the pacing of this is really weird, and why have they taken out all of the tension between Rey and Finn and Rey and Kylo, and why is it almost just like, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. I was like, this is weird and really childish. And then I realised I had bought the junior version, so it was childish, it was a middle grade. And I was devastated. So I finished reading it, it was fine, it was kind of boring, and then I unhauled it. So that's on me for not looking at it properly and just getting way too excited by a cover. I felt very stupid. I still feel very stupid. I feel very foolish. Okay, next we have Hamlet. This one I did, oh my god, my voice is going. This one I did as part audiobook, part hardback, and I loved it. And I'm so pleased because it's so beautiful. I was worried that I'd have to unhaul it because I'm not keeping anything that is lower than 4 stars because I just don't have the space for it. Well, I do now have the space for it, but I don't want to keep it regardless. So anyway, this looks at Shakespeare's family without ever naming Shakespeare. Okay, I will just quickly wrap this up because that's my buzzer. It's one of those things where I went in, and because it's so popular and so hyped, I was kind of convinced I was going to hate it. There are so many books that I wish I got to before the hype, and spoiler alert, there is a whole video about that coming out soon. But I really, really enjoyed it. I like the fact that it's the balance between what happens and how the play developed versus the main characters, as and when they're reacting to their kids getting the plague. I really liked the decadent writing style. I liked the main character. I found her really compelling, even though she's a little bit odd. I didn't mind that. I kind of love that. And it very much reminded me in writing style to The Familiars by Stacey Halls, which I really enjoyed. And there was another one recently. What did I read recently that was very similar? It was another historical fiction. That's going to bother me now. Another historical fiction I read the other day. God damn it. Oh, The Mercies by Kieran Mulworth-Hargrave, which I'm reading for Lamentable Library. All of them have a very similar theme, which is feminism in historical fiction, feminine characters, feminine protagonists, and dealing with male oppressors, male issues, and just patriarchy in general. Really, really enjoyed that, but I just thought this was really stunning. It was really well crafted, really well written, and if you're doing the All the World's a Page readathon, this would count for any of the tragedy prompts, but mainly beautiful cover, about a family, and writing style that you'll enjoy. I feel like it would tick all those boxes, so I would absolutely recommend it. I thought it was great. So to actually hold up in front, it's not many. I haven't hit my 7, I don't, have I? I don't know, I did quite a few. Okay, 10. So I think that's my personal best. I think previously it was either 9 or 10, might even be 11. But anyway, so I did a whole bunch, which is great. Check out all the links down in the description. Treat yourself to something from Waypoint. Obviously I will link the books that I recommend and are available from Waypoint down below anyway. And comment down below which of these books you're more likely to pick up now that you've seen what I thought of it. Other than that, I hope you have a nice day and I'll see you next time.